Adjustment layers are extremely powerful, and they're really useful for applying adjustments to multiple layers simultaneously. So you don't have to apply an adjustment or an effect to every single layer in your comp individually. So if you want to follow along, we're in Effects AEP, which is in the Effects folder, and we're in 08 Adjustment Layers. Now, if we have a look at this composition, you'll notice I have that nice glow on my drink layer. I have some shadows, and I have this green and lime background. Now, I think this background's a little bit weak. And what I've done in Photoshop is created adjustment layers, and you can create the adjustment layers in Photoshop, and when you import them into After Effects, they remain live. So if I'm trying out ideas in Photoshop, I tend to apply adjustment layers so that I can do color changes if I need to. And then sometimes I switch them off and just leave them in there so that I can then switch them on in After Effects if I need to make changes. So if I switch on this one, you'll notice it gives me a color change. And if I select that and hit the E key on the keyboard, notice there's a hue saturation effect, and that's come live from Photoshop. I actually applied the hue saturation adjustment layer in Photoshop, but it's translated into the effect in After Effects. Now, at the moment, it's only applied to the background, but if I drag it up, it's going to be applied to every single layer underneath it. Now, that's how adjustment layers work. They're applied to every layer underneath them in the stacking order of the comp. So at the moment, it's fine because I only want it to be applied to the background gradient. I've also got a levels adjustment in there as well. If I hit E on the keyboard, open up my levels, you'll see that allows me to adjust the levels for that background. Now, I may also want a levels effect for the whole comp. And if I want to do that, I can also create an adjustment layer directly in After Effects. So I can go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. And it appears as a solid layer, but a non-rendering solid layer, if you like. So if I wanted to make an adjustment, say, I don't know, we'll do something mad, like we'll put a distort effect on it. So something like the wave warp effect, let's put that on. And you'll notice now it's warping all of the layers underneath it. Now if I drag it underneath the text layer, it's only going to be affecting the background. Okay, if I drag it above the text layer, it's now affecting the text but not the logo. If I drag it all the way to the top, it's affecting everything. So the other thing that you can do with adjustment layers is you can mask them. So if I select the mask tool, the ellipse tool for example, and I just double click it with the layer selected, that's going to create a mask the size of my comp. Now it's going to look a bit silly applying that with a wave warp, because what's going to happen is it's only going to be waving within my selection. And of course, if I select that mask and hit Command T, I can just bring the size down. And if I hold down Command and Shift as I do it, I can constrain it and just move it to where I want that wave warp to be happening. Now, as I said, that's a bit nuts. We don't really want to mask a wave warp effect, but just to show you that we can. But what you can use it for, if we switch off the wave warp effect, is something like a levels effect. So if I type in levels here and apply my levels effect, and what we're going to do is switch off the levels effect that I applied in Photoshop, and instead what we're going to do is create like a vignette effect using the mask and the levels here. So let's adjust first of all the gamma, and you'll notice that's starting to darken everything down in the center here. And we can also adjust the input black a little bit, just to increase that. So we've got a really dark area in the middle. Now the only thing is with a vignette, we want the dark area to be on the outside. So in order to do that, what we need to do is just invert the mask. And we can do that either by changing it to subtract or just by clicking inverted. And now we have the dark area on the outside, the light area on the inside. Now the great thing about this is we can actually add a feather value to feather that, and we can also adjust the mask expansion to decide where that happens. So a lot of control over how that works. Now the nice thing about that is I can drag it above or below any of the layers in my comp to decide what's affected and what's not affected. So if I want the pattern to be affected by the vignette, I drag it above the pattern. If I want the pattern to be unaffected, I drag it below. So that's a little bit about how adjustment layers can be very useful. There's about 1 million ways that they can be useful. So check out the online help for some other tips and tricks using adjustment layers and effects.